It wasn't just another fighter aircraft. It was a meticulously engineered act of vengeance, the ultimate reckoning of an industrial titan against an agile warrior. In October 1944, over the vast skies of Leyte Gulf in the Philippines, countless dark blue F6F Hellcats dove into Japanese formations with unstoppable precision and fury. Every Japanese veteran who witnessed the sight felt a chill deep in their heart. They realized that the legend that had ruled the Pacific skies for nearly 3 years, the Zero, was being systematically erased by a stronger, colder force. This was no longer a duel of skill and courage. It was a confrontation between industrial power and war potential, played out across the heavens. From the moment it was conceived, every bolt and every inch of metal on the F6F Hellcat was built with one goal: to hunt and destroy the Zero. It didn't just outperform the legendary Mitsubishi, a 6M in numbers. It redefined the very laws of aerial combat in the Pacific. 6.50 caliber Browning M2 machine guns formed a deadly storm of lead, converging precisely at about 250 yards. Protecting its pilot was a fortress of armor, thick bulletproof glass, self-sealing fuel tanks, and armored plates around the cockpit, allowing it to survive multiple hits and still return home. Inside its nose roared the Pratt Whitney R 2800-10 Double Wasp, an 18-cylinder air-cooled radial engine producing more than 2,000 horsepower at takeoff, driving the 6-ton beast to speeds of 380 miles per hour, about 612 kilometers per hour, at 25,000 feet, and climbing at over 3,500 feet per minute. Soon, over the vast waters east of the Philippines, what unfolded was not a battle between equals, but a one-sided, systematic annihilation. The air campaign of the Battle of Leyte Gulf. Over just a few days, Japan's last elite naval aviators and hastily trained replacements were wiped out like moths against an invisible wall of Hellcats. More than 500 Japanese aircraft were lost, while Hellcat losses were negligible. That battle cemented the F6FS status as the most efficient carrier-based fighter in U.S. Navy history. Across the war, it achieved a staggering kill ratio of 19-1, an unmatched record in aerial warfare. It was a Hellcat that crushed the Zero in the era it represented, grinding Japan's aerial supremacy into the dust of history. The prelude to this final reckoning began quietly at dawn in October 1944. In the western Caroline Islands, the Ulithi Atoll had transformed from a tranquil lagoon into the largest naval anchorage on Earth. On the morning of October 10th, the fog still hung low as the rumble of engines and the blare of sirens merged into a symphony of war. Task Force 38, the cutting edge of the U.S. Navy's fast carrier strike force, was completing its final preparations for its next hunt, the Philippines. At its helm stood Vice Admiral Mark A. Mitcher, a lean yet tireless veteran aviator who had been flying since 1916. From the bridge of his flagship, the USS Lexington CV-16, he peered through his binoculars at his unprecedented fleet. Calm and sharp-eyed, he seemed to see beyond the mist to the distant battlefield. The fleet under his command was divided into 4 powerful task groups, a clenched iron fist of 4. Task Group 38.1, led by Rear Admiral John S. McCain, an aggressive and bold tactician, had the Wasp CV-18 as its flagship, along with the Hornet CV-12, Cowpens CVL-25, and Monterey CVL-26. Task Group 38.2, under Rear Admiral Gerald F. Bogan, was centered on the Bunker Hill CV-17 and included the Intrepid CV-11, Cabot CVL-28, and Independence CVL-22. Task Group 38.3, commanded by Rear Admiral Frederick C. Sherman, a master of carrier tactics, operated from the Essex CV-9, with the Lexington CV-16, Princeton CVL-23, and Langley CVL-27 under him. Task Group 38.4, led by Rear Admiral Ralph E. Davison, fielded the Franklin CV-13, supported by the veteran Enterprise CV-6, San Jacinto CVL-30, and Belleauwood CVL-24. In total, 17 fast carriers, 9 Essex-class fleet carriers, and 8 Independence-class light carriers, along with 6 fast battleships, 21 cruisers, and over 60 destroyers stretched across miles of ocean. On their decks and in their hangars rested over 1,000 aircraft, including more than 600 battle-hardened F6F Hellcats. Their opponents were under the command of Admiral Somu Toyota, with Vice Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa leading Japan's mobile fleet. Ozawa, considered a tragic figure by his peers, knew his limitations well. He could muster only 4 carriers. The fleet carrier Zuikaku, the last survivor of the 6 that had attacked Pearl Harbor, and 3 converted light carriers, the Zuho, Chitose, and Chiyoda. Together, they carried fewer than 120 aircraft. Supporting them were about 500 land-based planes scattered across the Philippines. But the numbers masked an even bleaker truth. The pilots on those carriers were no longer the elite graduates of Etajima and Kasumigaura. Years of attrition at Midway, the Solomons, and the Marianas had shattered Japan's naval air arm. Now, most replacements were barely trained cadets, many with under 100 flight hours, some with barely 50, and almost no live-fire experience due to fuel shortages. For many, their first combat mission would also be their last. They faced American pilots averaging over 400 flight hours, trained in dogfighting, formation tactics, navigation, and night operations, all fully qualified for carrier duty. What was about to unfold was an utterly asymmetric conflict of skill, training, technology, and industrial might. To understand the massacre that followed over the Philippines, one must return to the Hellcat's origins. Its creation was not mere technological evolution. It was a direct answer to the brutal lessons of early war losses. In early 1942, the skies of the Pacific belonged to the Zero. The Mitsubishi A6M, with its incredible agility and long range, became a living legend. The American F4F Wildcat, though sturdier and better protected, was often outmaneuvered and outclassed. Desperate Wildcat pilots developed thatch-weave tactics to survive, relying on teamwork rather than superior performance. The Grumman Aircraft Engineering Corporation, nicknamed the Iron Works for its rugged designs, was tasked with creating the Zero's nemesis. Under test pilot Bob Hall and engineer Bill Schwendler, the team studied a captured Zero in minute detail, identify its flaws, stiff controls at high speeds, poor dive performance, and virtually no armor or self-sealing tanks. Using this knowledge, Grumman built the XF6F-1 prototype based on a Wildcat, but the initial R2600 engine wasn't powerful enough. So they made a bold choice to replace it with a far more powerful Pratt Whitney R2800 Double Wasp. It required redesigning the entire front fuselage, but transformed the aircraft's potential overnight. The Hellcat embodied the philosophy of energy fighting. Instead of dogfighting at low speed and altitude, it leveraged speed, climb rate, firepower, and survivability. Its engine provided nearly twice the power of the Zero, allowing it to dictate when to engage or disengage. Its 6.50 caliber machine guns, each with 400 rounds, created a dense field of fire. Unlike the Japanese mix of light machine guns and 20mm cannons, the Browning rounds were faster, flatter, and deadlier in high-speed attacks. The Hellcat's greatest difference from the Zero was its survivability. The Zero had sacrificed armor for lightness, weighing just 1.68 tons. The Hellcat weighed 4.1 tons, most of the protection. Behind the pilot sat a thick steel plate. The cockpit was lined with bulletproof glass, and fuel tanks were wrapped in self-sealing rubber layers. Even the engine and flight controls were armored. Despite its size, the Hellcat handled surprisingly well. Its rugged landing gear made carrier takeoffs and landings safer, and its immense power allowed it to dive away from pursuers with ease. When the Hellcat entered mass production in mid-1943, it changed everything. U.S. pilots who had once fought cautiously against Zeros suddenly found themselves flying a plane that outmatched the enemy in every measurable way. They could choose how and when to fight, diving from above in boom and zoom strikes or outlasting their opponent in prolonged combat. By October 1944, the pilots of Task Force 38 had absolute faith in their machines. They were no longer the hunted. They were the hunters. On October 12, 1944, 2 weeks before General MacArthur's landing on Leyte, Task Force 38 launched massive pre-invasion airstrikes across the Philippines, the Ryukyus, and Taiwan. The goal was clear: to destroy Japan's air power and seize complete control of the skies. That day, the skies over Taiwan turned black with smoke. Wave after wave of Hellcats escorted SB-2C Helldivers and TBF Avenger bombers against airfields in Taipei and Kaohsiung. Japanese anti-aircraft fire filled the sky, and soon swarms of Zeros, G-4 Betties, and Ki-61 Tonys scrambled to intercept. In one fierce battle, Commander David McCampbell, leader of VF-15 from the Essex, faced his greatest moment, calm and steady. The 34-year-old from Alabama led his Hellcats high above the bombers. When radar reported a massive enemy formation, over 40 Japanese aircraft, he coolly ordered, "This is made. Enemy sighted at 10 o'clock, 22,000 feet. All sections free to engage. Priority bombers first." He dove first, his 6-gun spitting fire. A G4M burst into flames, spiraling down. Climbing back up, he dove again. A Zero disintegrated in midair. The sky became a slaughterhouse. Despite desperate Japanese attacks, the Hellcats dominated. McCampbell moved like a predator, striking, climbing, and striking again. When he finally ran out of ammo, he had downed 9 enemy planes in a single mission, a U.S. Navy record that still stands. His squadron, VF-15, claimed 54 kills that day without a single loss. Meanwhile, over the Philippine Sea, Japanese bombers struck back. On October 13th, the carrier Franklin took a direct hit, her deck engulfed in flames. Yet her crew fought the inferno and saved the ship. The attack proved that while Japan's air power was dying, it was still dangerous. The days of air battles over Taiwan ended in devastation for Japan. Hundreds of aircraft were lost. Dozens of irreplaceable veteran pilots perished. Though Tokyo's propaganda inflated the numbers, claiming to have sunk multiple American carriers, the truth was clear. The Imperial Japanese Navy had lost the last of its wings.